Marcus Adeyemi was not a man who made noise about his power. He did not need to. The moment he walked into a room, something in the air changed. Conversations lowered. Backs straightened. Eyes moved toward him the way sunflowers move toward light. Naturally, without thinking. He had built one of the largest logistics and trading companies in West Africa, with nothing but a borrowed truck, an old mobile phone, and a level of discipline that most people only read about in books. His employees called him the Alpha. Not to his face, of course. But he knew. He always knew. By the time Marcus turned 44, his company had over 800 employees across 5 countries. He had warehouses in Lagos, Accra, Nairobi, and Abuja. He had contracts with government agencies and private firms that most businessmen only dreamed about. He had a reputation that was built not on luck, but on years of early mornings, hard decisions, and an unbreakable ability to see problems before they arrived. But in the autumn of 2019, something arrived that even Marcus had not fully expected. It began with a folder. His personal accountant, a quiet and careful man named Emeka, placed it on his desk one Thursday morning without a word. Marcus opened it slowly. Inside were 3 months of financial records. Clean on the surface, but deeply wrong underneath. Money was moving in ways it should not have been moving. Invoices were being approved for services that did not exist. Payments were going to accounts that had no clear connection to any legitimate vendor. Someone inside his company was stealing from him. But as Marcus sat back in his chair and stared at the ceiling of his Abuja office, he realized that the money was not even the thing that troubled him most. What truly disturbed him was a quieter, colder thought. He did not know who it was, and if he did not know who it was, then he did not truly know the people around him. And if he did not know the people around him, then everything he had built was sitting on ground he had never actually tested. He closed the folder. He sat with that thought for a long time. That evening, he called his oldest friend and personal lawyer, Dele Okafor, to his penthouse apartment. Dele was a tall, calm man with reading glasses he wore on the end of his nose, and a habit of listening far more than he spoke. Marcus trusted him completely, not because Dele was brilliant, though he was, but because Dele had been there before the money, before the company, before any of it. He had sat with Marcus in a one-room apartment in their early 20s and eaten plain rice when there was nothing else. That kind of history did not lie. Marcus explained everything. The folder, the numbers, the quiet wrongness of it all, and then he explained what he wanted to do about it. Dele listened without interrupting. When Marcus finished, Dele took off his glasses, cleaned them slowly with the edge of his shirt, and put them back on. "You want to pretend to be weak," Dele said, "so that the people who are only loyal to your strength will show themselves." "Yes," Marcus said. "And the ones who stay loyal, even when they think you are falling. Those are the ones I want to know about," Marcus said. "Those are the ones I want to keep." Dele looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "How long?" 4 months, Marcus said. "Maybe less. We will see how quickly people reveal themselves." The plan was simple, but it required something that did not come easily to a man like Marcus Adeyemi. It required him to act small. He started the following Monday. He arrived late to the weekly board meeting, something he had never done in 11 years. He offered no explanation. He simply walked in, sat down, and said very little. He let the meeting drift without direction. He approved suggestions he would normally have questioned. He looked tired. He looked distracted. He looked, for the first time in his career, like a man who was losing his edge. The room noticed. He could see it in the way eyes moved around the table. That quick, nervous glance that people share when they sense a shift in power, but are not yet sure what to do with it. Over the following weeks, Marcus continued his performance with careful, quiet precision. He stopped wearing his custom-fitted suits and began coming to the office in simple shirts. He left early on days when there were important decisions to be made and let junior managers handle things they were not ready for. He gave vague answers when sharp ones were needed. He let small mistakes in reports go without comment. To anyone watching, the Alpha was slipping, and people began to move. Chief Balogun was the first to show his face clearly. He was Marcus's head of operations, a man with a large stomach, a loud laugh, and a handshake that went on just a little too long. He had worked beside Marcus for 11 years. He had attended Marcus's mother's funeral. He had given speeches at company events about loyalty and vision that brought people to their feet. Marcus had trusted him with decisions that shaped the direction of the entire company. Within 3 weeks of Marcus's performance beginning, Chief Balogun started taking private meetings with the owner of a rival firm. He did it carefully. Different locations, different times. But Marcus's attorney had quietly put the right people in the right places. The information came back clean and detailed. Chief Balogun was not just exploring options. He was actively offering inside information about Marcus's contracts, his pricing, and his upcoming expansion plans. In exchange for a senior position in the rival company, if and when Marcus's business weakened enough to lose its major clients. Marcus read each report in the evening, alone, with a glass of water and no music. He did not feel betrayed in the dramatic way that people imagine betrayal feels. It was quieter than that. It felt more like finally understanding the answer to a question he had been asking for years without knowing it. He filed the information away and said nothing. Sandra Eze was next. She had been Marcus's executive assistant for 6 years. She was sharp, fast, and organized in a way that made her nearly impossible to replace. Marcus had mentored her personally. He had written recommendation letters for her professional certifications. He had, without any announcement, paid 3 school terms of fees for her younger brother when her family went through a financial crisis. She had cried in his office the day she found out. She had told him she would never forget it. She forgot it. When Marcus appeared to weaken, Sandra began a quiet and careful communication with a financial journalist who was known for writing damaging stories about large companies. She passed along internal memos. She shared meeting minutes that were meant to stay private. She gave the journalist the kind of specific, insider detail that could only come from someone sitting very close to the center of power. She did it, Marcus's team discovered, not for money. She did it because she had already decided his time was ending, and she wanted to be on the right side of the story when it did. She wanted to be seen as someone who had been brave enough to speak up. She had confused betrayal with courage. Marcus read her file on a quiet Sunday morning. He set it down beside his coffee cup and looked out at the city below his window for a long time. Then there were the others, smaller movements, smaller decisions, but equally revealing. A department head who began arriving late and leaving early the moment discipline seemed to relax. A senior manager who started using company resources for personal projects, slowly at first, then more openly. 3 employees who had been given significant responsibilities and salary increases in recent years and who, the moment they sensed instability, began updating their profiles on job platforms and taking calls from competitors during work hours. Each one believed the house was emptying. Each one began filling their pockets on the way out. But there was another side to what Marcus was witnessing, and it was this side that moved him in a way that the betrayals never could. James Okoro was 28 years old and worked as a junior logistics coordinator in the Abuja office. He earned a salary that was honest but modest, and he had a young wife and a baby daughter whose photograph he kept on his desk. He was not a man anyone would have described as remarkable. He was simply a man who came to work, did his job correctly, and went home. One afternoon, James noticed 3 invoices passing through his department that did not look right. The amounts were unusual. The vendor names were ones he had never seen before. The approval signatures were technically valid, but something felt wrong to him. He checked again. Then he walked to the internal audit office and reported what he had found. He did not know those invoices were part of Marcus's carefully placed trap. He did not know that Marcus's team was watching every person who encountered those documents to see what they would do. James Okoro reported them simply because he believed it was the right thing to do, and he did not stop to calculate whether reporting them would benefit him or cost him. That report landed in Marcus's personal file that same evening. Marcus read it twice. Then there was Mama Chidinma. She was the head of the warehouse staff in Lagos, a woman in her late 50s with a firm voice and a habit of arriving before sunrise. Her team of 40 workers respected her deeply, not because she demanded it, but because she gave it first. When the uncertainty around Marcus's leadership began to spread through the company, it eventually reached the warehouse floor. Workers started asking questions. Productivity began to drop. The mood shifted. Mama Chidinma gathered her team on a Wednesday morning, before the workday began. She stood in front of 40 people and spoke without notes. "Our Oga is going through something," she told them. "I do not know what it is, but I know this. What happens to the company happens to us. We do not become careless because the man at the top is tired. We become better. Our character does not belong to his condition." Her team returned to work that morning with more focus than they had shown in weeks. A supervisor in the Lagos office heard the speech and mentioned it in a routine report. That report, like all reports during those 4 months, ended up in front of Marcus. He read Mama Chidinma's words 3 times. Then he set the paper down and sat quietly for a while. By the 4th month, Marcus had everything he needed. He had names, he had dates. He had documented evidence that was detailed and clean. He had watched his empire from the shadows and seen, with absolute clarity, who his people truly were when they believed no one important was watching. He called a full company assembly. Every department head, every senior manager, every person who held a position of trust within the company was summoned to the main conference hall in Abuja. They arrived that morning expecting the usual, perhaps a routine update, perhaps an announcement about restructuring, perhaps more evidence that the man who had built all of this was finally losing his hold on it. What they found was Marcus Adeyemi standing at the head of the room in a charcoal gray suit that fit him the way armor fits a soldier. He was not slouching. He was not distracted. He was not tired. His eyes moved across the room slowly, touching each face, and the people whose faces he touched seemed to feel it physically. The room went completely silent. He did not raise his voice. He never needed to. "I want to thank every person in this room," he began, "because over the last 4 months, each of you gave me something that money cannot buy. You gave me the truth." He let that sit in the air for a moment. "I have spent my career building something I believe in, but a company is not buildings or contracts or trucks or bank accounts. A company is people, and I realized, not long ago, that I did not truly know my people. I knew their titles, I knew their salaries, I knew their faces, but I did not know their character." He placed a single folder on the table in front of him. "So I decided to find out." The silence in the room changed. It became thicker. Several people shifted in their seats. Chief Balagun's large hands went very still on the table in front of him. Sandra, seated near the back, had gone a pale shade that was difficult to describe. Marcus did not open the folder. He did not need to. "Some of you, when you believed I was weakening, chose to protect what had been built here. You worked harder. You reported problems honestly. You told your teams to stay focused. You behaved exactly as I would have wanted. Not because you were being watched, but because that is simply who you are." He paused. Others made different choices. What followed was not dramatic. There was no shouting, no long public confrontation, no moment of theatrical exposure. Marcus was not that kind of man. The individuals who had acted against the company were informed privately, professionally, and finally. Chief Balagun was removed from his position by the end of that week, and faced a civil legal process that addressed the full weight of what he had done. Sandra Eze was dismissed. 3 other senior figures who had quietly worked against the company during those 4 months were let go without ceremony. Each door that closed was closed permanently. But the other side of Marcus's response was equally clear and equally final. James Okoro received a letter the following Monday informing him that he was being promoted to regional audit manager, 2 full levels above where he currently sat, with a salary adjustment that made his hands shake slightly when he read the number. He sat at his desk for several minutes before he was able to stand up. Mama Chidinma's entire Lagos warehouse team received a performance bonus that arrived in their accounts without warning or explanation. Marcus flew to Lagos the following month and attended her son's university graduation, sitting quietly in the back row. Mama Chidinma did not find out he was there until afterward. She said nothing when she saw him. She simply took his hand in both of hers and held it for a moment. That was enough. 2 junior employees who had quietly continued doing their jobs with full commitment throughout the uncertainty, asking no questions, expecting no reward, received salary increases and personal notes from Marcus, written in his own handwriting. The note said only, I saw you. Thank you. Marcus never spoke publicly about what he had done. He gave no interviews about it. He did not post about it. He did not turn it into a lesson at a conference or a chapter in a book. He simply returned to leading his company with the full weight of who he was, and now with a much clearer picture of who surrounded him. Years later, at a small private gathering of business leaders, a young man who had recently started his first company asked Marcus a question. "What is the most important thing you have learned about leadership?" he asked. Marcus looked at him for a moment. "Real strength does not need to perform," he said. "And real loyalty does not need an audience. The most dangerous thing a leader can do is surround himself with people who are loyal to his power rather than loyal to his purpose. Because the moment they believe the power is gone, they will be gone with it." The young man nodded slowly, writing this down. "And how do you find the ones who are truly loyal?" he asked. Marcus picked up his glass. "Give them a moment when they think you are not watching," he said simply. "What they do in that moment is who they are." He took a sip and said nothing more. And in a quiet boardroom in Abuja, in a company that had been tested and had survived, 40 people in a Lagos warehouse were loading trucks before sunrise, not because anyone was checking, but because Mama Chidma had told them once that their character did not belong to anyone else's condition. And she was right.